Hello, I'm Todd, here again with Ben on Pilots React. Today we were going to discuss the 747 went off the runway in Hong Kong last night at 3:50 a.m. Local time, it was October 20th, Zulu time, October 19th. So it did veer off the runway. It hit a car that killed two people, unfortunately, and it wound up in the water. So that's the first thing we discuss. For those of you who happen to be aviation geeks out there, we're also going to compare 4 other accidents after that. And I pulled up an old 1963 hydroplaning video from NASA, which really resonated with me a long time ago. So I did a little research, found it. I think you guys might find that interesting, or at least I hope you guys might find that interesting. Rather. So let's take a look here. And this is the aftermath. So that's the 747 Air Cargo, ACT. Search and rescue, obviously. It does not look like a good day. Okay. So that's the first interesting thing, Ben.
The wings
there were
stayed
2
on.
casualties. Say again?
It was interesting to see the wings stayed on, but the fuselage broke. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's no video, unfortunately, of how it transgressed from the runway to the water. That would be interesting to check out. So first off, here is the normal ASN report. Just gives you a brief description about what I just said earlier. It was traveling about 90 knots over the ground as it veered off the runway towards the seawall. According to ADS-B data, the aircraft hit the water about 49 knots, and eventually it showed ADS-B showed it was at 43 knots. The weather at the time was 240. I'm sorry, 020 at 4 knots, gusting to 21. And so a few gust factors, and they landed on 07 left. Let's see. So if you take a look at this, that was a beautiful aircraft beforehand. And there's the graphic of the touchdown speed, roughly, right on the numbers, right on 1,000-foot markers at 134. And then about 90 knots or so, it starts to veer off to the side, hits the grass, then it hits the perimeter road, and unfortunately a vehicle was driving on that perimeter road. The initial report said that the vehicle was on the runway, and they're not true. And then it went off into the water, as we saw earlier with a couple of pics. And you can see right there, the slides were inflated. All 4 crew members got out. But unfortunately, the 2 people in the car did not. So what happened was one man, age 30, was pulled by rescue divers from the sea and confirmed dead at the scene at about 5:55 a.m. The other 41 was confirmed dead at the hospital about 6:26 a.m. So the reports were that the runway were safe. Whether or not that means it was contaminated and wet is another story. And it is, I did look it up. It is a grooved runway, a good grooved surface. So viscous hydroplaning should be, or the possibility of hydroplaning should be a little bit lowered. So what's your take on that for a bit, Ben?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but if they were landing 07 runway 2 and the wind was from 070, or did I get that backwards?
The other way.
Yeah.
Landing
So
runway 7.
Runway 7 and wind 020. So that's a 50-degree crosswind, quartering crosswind from the left. And looking at the direction the plane went, that would be, if you were not compensating for that crosswind with good rudder directional control. When the aircraft slows down, you've got your wind hitting your rudder and pushing your nose to the left. So if they lost rudder authority, or they lost braking authority, or any of those things, I could see, or they weren't compensating for the crosswind adequately, which would be very surprising. I could see how aerodynamically the airplane would have ended up going off the left side of the runway. But I'm, again, not a jet pilot, and I don't know of all the systems that they have for braking, for anti-skid, or any of these other things. So could it be a mechanical failure? Could it be pilot error? It's very hard to tell right from this level of information.
I would concur 100%. There are a number of factors, in my opinion, in my experience, that could veer an airplane off to the side of the runway. And I do find it interesting that they landed at a higher speed, were able to keep it on the center line, and then around 90 knots, it started going off the side. That perplexed me a little bit. So I have twice in my life had thrust reverser issues, where upon landing, one doesn't open, or one does, they're not coming up even, or one doesn't open. So the very first time was sometime back in Alere, and we came in, and I was the flying pilot. I popped it up, and the non-flying pilot didn't say anything. At the time, this is a long time ago, when it wasn't a standardized call out to say, hey, TR's deployed, or anything really. So I wound up veering off to the side of the runway, almost getting to the side, realizing what the hell is going on. I started using full right rudder. I started doing a little bit brake tapping on my brake to get it back. And then finally, I just realized maybe it's, the thrust of the engine, the TRs, and I shoved the thrust back down, the TRs back down. Second I did that, I straightened the airplane out. I was able to recover and get to the center line. After that, I wound up religiously saying, 2 deployed, 2 up, coming up even. I even would make this, call out saying coming up even, and watch my gauges go up simultaneously to make sure I'm getting equal thrust on both engines. So I'm not getting a lot of asymmetric thrust happening. And another time that happened actually in a Challenger once as well, and that was a non-event. Just 2 unlocked, 2 deployed, 1 is not coming up, and then actually, the guy I was flying with, and he was flying pilot, and he just easily controlled the airplane, kept it on the center line.
Now, let me ask you this: so in those biz jets, you have narrow engine, the engine nacelles are on the fuselage. So asymmetric thrust is going to be lesser than on like a 747, where you have the nacelles much offset from the center line of the jet.
I honestly would guess you are accurate. I think that would make sense. It also depends on the TRs, like if they're clamshells as well, or what the 747, I think they have sliding. I think they slide back and have vane guides that are directing the thrust backwards. So I think that would make a difference as well. So yeah, the center line of thrust is definitely probably further out than a biz jet, so the effect may be bigger. But that's me speculating. And from this accident, I think the only thing we can do really is speculate at this moment in time, because we don't have a lot of data. But looking at the other accidents and looking how this veered off, we can possibly come to some sort of conclusion. So the next option here, Ben, is hydroplaning. Do you know anything about hydroplaning?
I do. A pad of water builds up under your tire, and it's like you're on ice. I've felt it on my in my Tiger landing on a wet runway before, where you start braking, and then all of a sudden there's absolutely no braking to be had, and the solution is just to get off the brakes and maintain your directional control with your aerodynamic surfaces, your rudder.
Yep.
But that's a 1,600-pound Grumman Tiger versus heavy metal.
Exactly, a lot different. I remember going through training in one of my airlines or somewhere, I can't remember, but they showed me in 1960. I didn't know it was 1963. They showed me a video of how hydroplaning was researched. And it was from 1963. And for whatever reason, it stuck in my mind because I thought it was done so damn well. So I pulled it up. I have it, but we can go through that in a little while after we go through the other chain of accidents. And I just think it's, for the aviation geeks out there, I think it's kind of cool just seeing a 1963 video describing and research hydroplaning is pretty cool. The next thing is a gear collapse. That's always a possibility. So so with hydroplaning, could it be possible? Of course. But they're at lower speeds now with a grooved runway and a heavy aircraft. I'm not 100% sure I would go in that direction because hydroplaning may have happened early, I think probably in the beginning phases when the tire speed was a little bit higher. Because from what this video will show you, the faster they go, the less surface areas touching the ground. So that has a lot to do with friction and coefficients of friction. So I'm not too sure about that one. The gear collapse, possible if you have a gear collapse, but then the track that we saw may not have been so longitudinally forward. You know, it went off on like a 30-degree angle. It didn't veer off like a tail dragger who looped it, you know?
Yes.
And I think that we would have seen a little bit more damage.
And we'd see damage to the runway. So I think if there was a gear collapse, they would have probably included that in the preliminary because you'd have indication. You'd have pieces of the landing gear sitting on the runway. You'd have gouges in the runway where the metal, not rubber, touched and gouged it out. So I think probably unlikely on that one.
I'm going I agree. Okay, so then my concept comes down more to this idea: hydraulic braking problems or hydraulic issues, or mechanical issues that may not have to do with the hydraulic system. But if something failed, a brake locked up, or hydraulics failed, or anti-skid, I researched this. Anti-skid kicks off at 17 knots on the 7.4. So maybe there was a failure of the valves in the anti-skid braking system. I don't know. But I do know I personally have lost hydraulics. I don't know if it's, I know for one definite fact. So I lost, I think I talked to you about this once. I lost the ability to extend my gear. I lost outboard braking. I lost my nose wheel steering, and I lost my emergency braking. And then I lost my number 2 rudder actuator. But that was already not enabled because of the airspeed, so it didn't matter. But with a hydraulic issue, you could definitely have steering problems. There's no doubt about it. So that's higher, in my opinion, on the possibility list. And then, what do you think?
Well, I just had a question. When do you know on the 747 when you engage TRs, thrust reversers?
You're going to engage TRs. Let me just go back on all airplanes the same. So the second you land and you have wheel contact and weight on wheels, then you're going to bring the thrust all the way back, and then right there it's almost a simultaneous thrust idle. You're unlocking the TRs, and then you're deploying them, and they should come up spooling evenly automatically as you're slowing through 80 knots, 60 knots. Interesting that you say that, because
90 knots.
Exactly. And you just brought up something. You usually stow them. You start stowing them in some airplanes roughly around 80-ish, and then have them fully stowed, because you don't want FOD, foreign object damage, being thrown up into the engines and the wings and everything else in the area when you're at slow speeds, and aerodynamic forces aren't bringing that thrust aft of you. So they would have stowed it, or started to stow that a little bit earlier, 80, 90. So maybe it's not a TR issue either, now that I'm thinking about it. Okay.
I was just wondering if that 90 knots, when they exited the runway or went off course, if that 90 knots correlated with activation of a system. And like if you got asymmetrical thrust from thrust reversers, that could be a data.
There is an accident that happened. I didn't read too deeply into it. We're briefing it in a little while. I just touched on some bullet points. It was United Airlines 2477. And the pilot, the NTSB report came out later on saying that the pilot stowed the speed brakes. And that had some sort of correlation with the braking mode and him. He didn't, and he went gradually. I guess it kicked off anti-skid for some reason. I think they might have slowed down below anti-skid usage, and he didn't apply, or he applied gradual pressure rather than full pressure. So I think they were a little bit too fast towards the end of the runway when they made the turnoff, and thus they actually hit the grass and they actually went off the runway. So that it might have something to do with that. That's possible. I don't know. I'm not a 747 guy, but systems are relatively all the same. And this is an 747-400 is an antiquated airplane, so I'm sure we would have, try to build upon their systems, their hydraulics, and everything else. Okay, so that's roughly our thesis. So I'm going to go with the idea of it being a braking problem. That's my idea, or hydraulic problem. Also, we have the crew. I think they came from Dubai to Hong Kong. It's 4 people in the crew. So obviously they're going for a long haul, getting some rest. Circadian rhythms may have played a part. Anytime you do a red-eye flight and they're landing 3:50 a.m. local time, you're not 100% on your game. No matter how much coffee you drink, you're a little bit off your game a bit, So that can play into human factors, circadian rhythm issues. Okay, so I think that's our thesis. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up my lovely, what's it called? NASA 1963 video. Do you see it on your side, Ben?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah. Wi-Fi's a bit slow. Here we go.
Carriage at the track in order to learn more through photographs.
Okay, so give you a little description. NASA built
Nose gear.
Built this entire track that you see. So what the thing on the right-hand side is a mechanism to, just pull a wheel that's right in the center of the screen on water that is situated above like glass or plexiglass, and put pressure on that wheel that's riding on that. So they built this whole entire thing to go at different speeds so they can, with a high-speed camera, record underneath the wheel.
It was mounted on the small carriage at the track in order to learn more through photographs and force measurements about what happens in the tire ground contact region for partial and for total hydroplaning. In this first run, with the tire moving at a speed below total hydroplaning speed, the darker area of the footprint is the contact area between tire and ground. The lighter area of the footprint is the portion supported by the water. This partial separation between footprint and ground indicates a loss in braking effectiveness and directional stability, even under partial hydroplaning conditions. In this run, with the tire moving at a speed above total hydroplaning, the complete absence of a dark contact area indicates complete separation between tire and ground.
So yeah, I don't know. I just found that fascinating. For whatever reason, years and years passed by, and I still remember that video for a good description of how hydroplaning works.
Yeah, indeed. We owe so much to the engineers and scientists in the past. The level of knowledge that has been baked into the hardware, into the procedures, it's just built on research just like that. So whenever people say the space program didn't get us anything, well, it did. It made us safer because that was probably done in preparation for the space shuttle's landing gear certification. So it just goes to show that the research we do, publicly funded research that we do, is beneficial across industries if it's done correctly. And in that case, NASA was doing some great things. Their crash tests are something that you should also look up.
I've seen them. They're great.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
Where they take a Cessna 172 and it's hanging from a crane and they drop it from like 50 feet. And then they drop it from 100 feet. And it's like, okay, well, that's what would happen if you flare too high.
I like the test rockets going into the wall myself personally. I'm like, wow, that's phenomenal, you know. And also the ejector seats on the fighter jets. Oh yeah, those great. Okay, so now let's go unfortunately to a little bit of not positive, stuff. Unfortunately, I'll just do it briefly. Ben, I'll just recap a couple of the things here. So the first one is a KLM accident. Let's see. So this was it's not that bad. They ran out the runway. It's attributed to hydraulic failure that occurred shortly after the flight took off. So they were aware of the hydraulic issue. So when they landed, they skidded off the side of the runway. No injuries were reported. They had 182 people on board. So that's a little bit different, but it's definitely a hydraulic issue. And for me, this is kind of what's pointing in that same direction. There's a KLM picture. I kind of think that's what I would assess. I would think that this is the same issue. And here is the United airline flight. So this one, just briefly, you guys can take a picture, read that there. I'll move this over for a second for you. Yeah, the aircraft pretty much landed, left main, hit the grass, touchdown event uneventful. Contributed factors, including the brake, auto system configuration, speed brake. There we go. The speed brake lever retracted, disabling auto brakes. That's what the pilot did. So that part is the interesting part for this accident, that it was actually somewhat pilot induced. And that may or may not have a factor in this. And so they went all the way to the end of the runway. They slid off at the very end. They didn't slow down enough to take that turn, and they wound up just like that. And then you can see that other picture there. And one of my favorite videos on this stretch here is this guy. Oh, he's going skidding. Totally skidding. He's off-roading. Definitely off-roading. Yep. And then he pretty much taxis back. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That one, now, even seeing him taxi back is a little sketchy, to say the least. But you can see the video. If I'm not the best, you can see in the video that the fuselage is actually covered in mud and dirt as well. I'll play the beginning part of that one more time, just because he's off and he's trying to get back. Now at that point, I think he damaged pretty good amount of the airplane. So I don't know if I'd be inclined to taxi off the runway either, or just get towed in. But yeah, that was an interesting one. And that one for the people interested in that accident, that was an Airbus 320 operated by Lithuanian charter airline Avion Express. 185 passengers skidded off, but nobody was hurt. So that's all good. And then we have a little bit more recent ones from JetBlue. And one of them I have the audio on. It's pretty cool. Just the way the pilot was just pretty relaxed when it was going on. I think they already knew the issue was there. So, and the first one is in Boston. So let's bring the Boston one up first. And there's the Boston. So they're coming to Logan on June 12, 2025. Flight 312 skidded off the runway after riding in Chicago. And apparently, the notes on this they said the pilots lost control. They lost steering. So all of a sudden, they lost the ability to steer. This just happened a little while ago, so there's not a final report on it yet. So you have to consider that, is it possible that on the 747 they lost the ability to steer as well? And that equates to hydraulic problems. And, the hydraulic system is directly, it nose wheel steering is a hydraulic system. So then finally, we have the audio, which is kind of cool. Blue as well. This is in, I'm mistaken, Orlando.
488, Jeff. Yeah, we have no braking, no steering. We're trying to stop the aircraft. We're slowly rolling towards the grass because we have no braking, no steering.
I just like that. We're slowly rolling towards the grass because we have no braking, no steering. Okay, well, you can't do much at that point. So, yeah, exactly. So you're just holding on and trying the best you can to stop the airplane aerodynamically. There is one alternative, and we were taught this years ago. This is after, I have to think if I'm allowed to say this. Maybe I can't say this. There are a few things, I guess it's just pilot technique now, so it should be acceptable. So in certain situations, there's an accident that does this too. So in certain situations, we have the ability to manually override the WOW sensors. And the WOWs are weight on. Yeah.
So you dump the landing gear?
You dump the
so
landing
retract
gear.
your landing gear.
Retract the nose wheel steering, the nose gear.
Okay.
The other one, the weight on the nose gear, the weight on the mains is not going to come up. The nose usually retracts backwards aft, and
so it'll collapse.
It will collapse. So if you manually hit that button and bring the gear up, you're coming to a stop. No matter how, whether you like it or not, you're coming to a stop. It may not be pretty. Hopefully you don't have a lot of gas on board and you're not going to flip over, but it's one way to stop. And I do know of one accident where a guy did this, and I could try to research it. It was a phenomenal job. And if he didn't do that, everyone on board would have died. And the fact that he even had the thought process to say, yeah, let me do it in this situation is phenomenal.
Interesting.
It is. Yeah.
And also most runways have the stopping system at the end of the runway. So EMAS. Okay. Yeah. What's that? That's like emergency material arresting system or something.
I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. I think that is emergency material arresting system.
It's just deep gravel. Like the idea is I think it's just deep gravel, and
I thought
the
it was
plane
manufactured.
Or it might be at my airport. It looks like gravel. But the idea is, if I've seen planes when they go into it, they're literally like their wheels are sunk into it and they just stop. So it just puts a lot of friction on you.
Unfortunately, it's expensive. Otherwise, I think it would be at every single freaking airport we ever go into. But it is phenomenal, and I love seeing it at the end of any airport because it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. If you go off the end, you have a huge chance of being safe. Yeah. It's just, and there are many airplanes that have gone off into EMAS, and they're perfectly fine. They're relatively fine. The gear might need to be changed. That's about it. Maybe their pants need to be changed, but other than that, that's it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. If you stuck around for the 1963 video from NASA, we appreciate it. It was fun. Take care and safe flying. Bye.
Bye, guys.